Begin. Hi everyone, I'm Trinity. I'm an assistant editor at the British Ecological Society, and thank you so much for joining today. We're really looking forward to this AER Live. Before we begin, I would just like to let you know that this workshop is being recorded, and if you have any questions at all, please feel free to put them in the chat or wait till the end to ask your questions as we'll be having a Q&A session then. And yeah, this session is brought to you by Applied Ecology Resources. And some more information on Applied Ecology Resources is that it's part of the British Ecological Society's grey literature repository that we have. Hugo, if you move to the next slide. Thank you. Yeah, if we have a QR code there, if you'd like to learn more information on applied ecology resources. But yeah, we host AER Lives and it's an annual thing. So yeah, looking forward to doing more of these this year. And today's session, we're joined by Dr. Hugo Magaldi and Professor Sabrina Krief, who will be talking to us about camera trapping in the African forests. And they've put together a deep learning model to help the labeling of species. So really looking forward, and I will pass over to Professor Sabrina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trinity. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today, and thank you for inviting us, Trinity, to share some of our work. So maybe Hugo, you can start with the first slide. So I will shortly introduce the topic of today. I'm professor at the Museum of Natural History in Paris, and I'm also directing the Sebitoli Chimpanzee Project. And I would like to explain why we decided to work with camera trap, and especially camera trap in tropical forests. So the first slide. As I guess many of you knows, this is an urgent need for mitigating biodiversity loss, especially on terrestrial mammals, which represent now only 4% of free-ranging mammals population. And today we know that 1 million of species are threatened with extinction in the near future. So we need to have a better way to monitor this biodiversity. Next slide. And especially in tropical forests, which could provide us with a lot of ecosystem services, especially for people who live in the vicinity of this tropical forest, which represent about 1.6 billion of people. Tropical forests are known as a biodiversity hotspot. They contain about half of the vertebrate species, 60% of the terrestrial flora species, and 100% of great apes. And as I told you, I work with great apes since about 30 years. So this is really, for me and in general, for research, a key point, especially because they are today disappearing with a very quick rate. We consider that the main threat to tropical forests are intensive agriculture. Half of the expansion of agriculture occur at the expense of forest. And there is at least 3 reasons you can see here for halting tropical forest degradation. So first, human welfare, biodiversity conservation, and also climate change mitigation. Next slide. And currently, we are working in Kibale National Park, which is well known for its primate diversity, with 13 different species of primate and about 1,000 to 1,500 chimpanzees. I've been working in Kibale National Park since 1999, and especially in the northern part of Kibale National Park, the Sebitoli Chimpanzee Project, since since 2008. In this part of the national park, which is in the northern part of the park, chimpanzees are really threatened by human pressure, especially because there is a lot of crops around and tea plantation. And so we worked on 80 chimpanzees to better understand the impact of the human pressure on their behavior and on their health. And we work with 55 Ugandan members in this project to better understand not only the chimpanzee behavior and health, but also try to find solutions together with local population for a better future for the forest, for themselves, and for biodiversity. In this context, I would like to introduce the first work we did with camera trap. So the first one of the first I want to introduce is a work we did with elephant. Using camera trap, we noticed that there were different phenotype of elephant, and this was in line with what local people were telling us, because they had a lot of crop damages in their field occurring with some aggressive elephant, and they reported that those elephants had forest phenotype. And when we look at the camera trap clips images, we notice that most of the elephant looks like savanna elephant. So we use algorithm and machine learning to confirm this, and we found that only 12% of phenotype of elephant were belonging to forest type, 37 were of savanna type, and some elephants have intermediary phenotype, which was very surprising because, as you may know, elephants are supposed to be of two species, so they should not be hybrids, and those hybrids look to be fertile with like a continuous different phenotype. So actually, our survey confirms that forest and savanna elephant can reproduce and produce fertile hybrids, which means that we need to strengthen forest elephant conservation, but also provide a status for hybrids elephant, which so far do not have any conservation status. A second example was because we noticed that chimpanzees were having nocturnal behavior. Using camera trap at this location where chimpanzees are very shy, we noticed that most of the clips were occurring at the edge of the forest and not within the territory of the chimp. And we use this information to modify the practices of local farmers. We provide chimps guardian to help them to guard their crops at night and to reduce the conflicts there were between villagers, farmers, and wildlife. And finally, the third case where camera traps were very useful was for studying chimpanzee phenotype, because we noticed that chimpanzee, who usually looks like the one in the middle of this slide, had in Sebitoli nose defect. You can see all the other one around having like nose disformities, and we use camera trap to capture some of the chimpanzee who were more shy than the other. Next slide. And using this as well, we were able to notice that baboons were also having nose disformities, and this led us to work on pollution exposure and to find out that chimpanzees were exposed to huge agriculture pollution with up to 60 pollutants in the hair, in the matrix of the hair. And this also lead to find and look for solution together with local farmers, especially to propose sustainable agroforestry, try to work on certified organic production of tea in approach of One Health. So this first survey showed that the camera traps were very useful, not only to do research and for conservation purposes, But however, there were a lot of limits because it was very time consuming to analyze all those clips. And that's why when One Forest Vision initiative was launched in Gabon, we propose to use camera trap to reduce first the human footprints on habitat and species. We don't need to habituate, for example, chimpanzee, or to be at risk by studying elephant directly in the forest. And we will have with these camera traps access 24 hours and 7 days per week to record of biodiversity. But we really need to have automatic data processing because it was very time consuming. And so the One Forest Vision initiative is a project which was launched in 2023 for more than 5 years, 6 years. And in this context, we decide to propose camera trap, but also acoustic as a way to reduce human footprints and to monitor wildlife in different sites, including Sebitoli as super site. And so that's how Hugo joined our team, and he will explain what he has developed in the next slides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina, for the introduction. Thank you also to British Ecological Society for the opportunity to speak today. And thank you, Trinity, and all the AER team for organizing everything. So maybe I'll start with just an easy quiz. Maybe easy for you. It's not always easy for me, but to see if the humans are still better than the AI or not. So the goal here is to detect the animal and classify the species. This one is an easy one, so I will go ahead and say it is a spotted hyena. I think you probably have it. This one may be a bit more tricky if you're not used to African tropical forest. I don't know if anybody has a clue. I actually cannot see the chat. So. Okay, so this is a blue duiker, so it's a small kind of antelope. This one is an easy one, so I'll leave you a few seconds, but I think you have it. It's a close-up porcupine. This one is maybe a bit more tricky because we don't have the whole body, we don't see the face. So here I think it's a civet. And you see the AI is actually not very specific because it groups it together with genet. So if you add civet, you're actually better than the AI in this version. Chimpanzees that Sabrina was talking about. The trick here is that we have two in the image. Open view this time. I don't know if you're used to these, but we have a lot of them, the guineas, different kinds of guineas. And maybe the hardest one here will be trying to classify the speaker. So ecologists may be a first guess, but it's not actually true. It would be a false positive. As Sabrina said, I joined the team like 2 years ago, but before that, I used to work in the private sector and I have no ecological degree. So I guess the audience is much more knowledgeable on these topics than I am. I actually have a PhD in mathematics, but I stopped doing math some time ago. So now I'm more involved into SD cards and deployment bugs. Then I do also a bit of programming, but it's more of kind of an acquired skill to survive. And I guess the best label would be somewhere in between all of this. And the reason I'm mentioning this now is because this in-between position is actually why I care about the whole chain, meaning like starting from field reality to building data pipelines to the actual model building and then the downstream ecological loops. And that's what I will try and explain today in a quite short time and based on my 2 years experience. So it's not at all exhaustive, of course. The whole chain that I was mentioning, it starts with an ecological question and it ends with ecological inference. And what you may wonder if you're here today is, okay, I want to maybe develop, expand, or start a camera trap program to support the ecological analysis that you're already doing, and what are the different steps and how do I do that? That's what I will try to explain some part of it today, and trying to stress also what can go wrong, because things will go wrong at some point. What does the AI do well and what it does not do well, and where we still do need people and especially local expertise. The takeaway, I think I can give it now without spoiling the talk, it's that the scientific value of what you will build actually stems from the local expertise, as I was saying, that you're able to input in the chain and to combine the technological and the AI side of things. I guess that's a glass half full way to say it. The glass half empty would be that if you have bad field data, it will be hard to rescue it downstream. So the design choices that you make upstream, in my experience, determine what kinds of inference will be valid downstream. What I'll be talking about is based on the model that we've developed, which is called DeepForestVision. It's been published last year in Ecological Solutions and Evidence. And there's a manual, which is more on the technical side of things, which has been submitted to go with it. But it's not, of course, not new in the literature. There are plenty of already existing good studies on how to build a camera trap program. So here are some of them. So my talk will be in two parts. Part one will be more actually setting up the camera traps and the organization. And then the second part will be about DeepForestVision and the AI. So part one is basically the practical field foundation of this talk, and how to make your AI and later analysis easier if you have built a good protocol, a good team, and a strong data handling, ideally from day one. So why use camera traps? I'll be quick on this because Sabrina already explained that, but maybe you're accustomed to direct observation. It has its benefits and its constraints. One of them is the time consuming, and of course the fact that it's hard to observe the species and it may be dangerous to you or to them. So you may consider complementary methods. Some of them are indirect, like in non-invasive biological sampling. You can count nests for the chimpanzees. You could do survey with local populations, and then it comes remote monitoring for the direct observations. So I will focus on camera traps today, but you also have ecoacoustic, drones, and so on. First things first, let's say you want to start your camera trap program today. Maybe the main thing is the first decision to make is not the device, not the brand or the model of the camera, but it's actually the ecological question combined with the output that you need. The output, it can be like biodiversity inventory, it can be occupancy study, behavior sampling. It could be density, but density is a bit harder because it requires specific calibration and techniques. So this you need to be aware of at the start. And this dictates your protocol that you'll be using. And only when you have your protocol, you try and meet with field constraints. And maybe to make this a little more graphic, here is so for different kinds of protocol, the one we've been using at the Sebitoli Chimpanzee Project, we have two kinds. The standardized one, which is a grid-like placement, which is good for having exhaustive placement for general biodiversity monitoring. And it has the advantage of being replicable because you can have this replicated to other study sites using the same protocol. And then the second kind of protocol I will show after is more targeted placement for species or behavior of interest. So here on the left side, you've got the actual PowerPoint paper design for the grid protocol that I helped implement last year in Sebitoli, which was aimed at documenting general biodiversity in Kibale National Park. So 6 months and about 20 camera traps. And on the right side is the field reality of what was actually installed and where. It's actually not that bad. I think we've seen worse, but it's not, as you see, it's not exactly the same. Just maybe a few examples of what you can get with this kind of protocol. So I hope you get the video and the sound. So this is an African golden cat. It's actually a quite rare species to spot, and you really have trouble spotting it with direct observation. But if you have a kind of an exhaustive placement with your cameras, that's something that you're able to see. This is by day, and also in terms of cryptic species by night now. So this is our friend, the pangolin. So this is for the grid placement. The second kind of protocol I was mentioning is more targeted. So you choose where you put your camera station depending on the exact things that you want to observe. In our case, in Sebitoli, for instance, we put one here because our camera traps are mostly ground-based, are actually all ground-based, but we have arboreal species, in particular primates that we'd like to observe and to know if they're present or not. So what we do is that we set up camera at strategic sites like geophagy sites, water points like here, or mineral lakes. And here you can see red color birds, and sometimes they're even accompanied by black and white colors. So that's a good way to spot arboreal species, even with a ground-based camera trap. Quick other example here. Sorry about that. I don't know. Okay, this one is not running, it's okay. But it's an example of tool use by chimpanzee. So they go to the nest of stingless bee and they use wooden tools to fetch the honey. So because we know where the bees are, we know where to put the camera to actually document the tool use. This was a carcass site with a dead elephant. So we set up the camera there to observe the elephant's behavior, kind of like morning rituals. And you see, like here, if you want to observe elephants, this affects where you place your camera. And this last one, which seems to have the same bug, is actually what Sabrina was talking about crop feeding. So we have chimpanzee going to the maize fields to feed, and this is something we're trying to document to try and test different repulsive techniques and help with that issue. So what we've learned at the Sebitoli is that if you don't know where to start, maybe a practical tip here would be to have like a core set of cameras for a standardized design, like a grid protocol. And then you keep a subset that's flexible depending on your current management priorities or the behaviors that you're trying to catch. This way you can do both. And the interest of having the core placement is you have reproducible data for generic studies. The other thing, it's a kind of a generic life tip, I guess, but it's true for the camera trap program, is that you'd like to have realistic expectations. So even if you do everything right, detection will still be imperfect. If you're trying to assess complicated outputs, like for instance, density I was mentioning, it will require specific calibrations, design and assumptions. You may not be able to get it that right straight. And also, the AI will always output something. What you do and how you interpret it is really up to you, and that's where you should be careful. And for instance, for camera traps, you'll have maybe rare detections of pangolins, of African golden cats, but this is not necessarily ground truth for abundance. So this is only detections with partial information. Okay, now assuming you've got your ecological objectives and your protocol set up, second step is actually making your cameras survive in forest, and this is an important one because many AI errors and errors in downstream analysis actually begin as field placement problems. So for that, I stated here a few placement principles that are all documented in the manual I was mentioning. One of the most important is that to use the local knowledge from the team, because they know the right placement for the trail, they know which placement are at risk, and they know where to put the camera best. And in the end, I think it's always going to be a trade-off, your placement, your station placement, between biological relevance, technical performance, and also risk of damage or theft. So that's one point. And here you can see one of our team members, Robert Asimwe. He's made a short clip to summarize this. So you'll pardon the French. So trimming the vegetation, not too much. Camera settings, trying a bit of camouflage, so the best we can. And if everything goes right, the camera is well set up, you have a good placement, you have an open view, then that's what you get. So here, that's the Garbo and Gabin, two of our chimpanzees crossing the river. Okay, that's a short way to sum up quite a long process. And to implement this process, you need more than just the actual pile of hardware. You need a good organization for your program. And this means proper teams. So at SCP, we do weekly visits, not necessarily because the devices are going to fail, but because a lot of things can go wrong. And the more often you're able to visit the spots, the safer you are in terms of getting like a good input of data for your protocol. We have them work in pairs, which is better for safety and reliability. And there's an older side about data processing at camp, which I come back to in the next slide. And all of this is also possible via good coordination. And here our man for this is Innocent Kasakendi, our coordinator at the station. He is responsible for making sure that the protocol is well followed, for doing the inventory and for troubleshooting the many problems that can occur along the way. So yes, that's for I guess, the forest side. So you've got how to put your cameras, the maintenance, and how to organize your whole team to take care of this. Now, assuming this is set up, what happens is that you have maybe, I don't know, 30-ish camera traps in the forest. And weekly, that's maybe 1,000 up to 2,000 clips that you collect. So it's a lot of data. And in order to process that efficiently, it's better if you plan ahead your whole data stewardship chain. So it starts actually in the forest, not on the computer, the field collection and the management of the SD cards. Then we have several layers of backing up the data because, well, problems can happen and will happen. And then you've got the whole AI processing to help with the labeling and the quality control to make sure that the data that is being produced is useful for the ecological research. So that will be the second part of the talk. For now, I just want to stress a few points, is that when you monitor the performance of this whole chain, volume is just not your only metric, because you can get a lot of clips that are not usable for the research because they are blank, for instance. So you need to watch for camera failures and repair them. And you need to, as much as possible, I would advise to standardize everything. So this includes your whole folder structure, like informatic-wise, but also the labeling you use, because if you have a mix of human label and AI labels, as we do, you need like a deterministic mapping between the two. That's something you should plan ahead. And then in the end, the quality check is a very important step, because as I was saying, the AI will always output something, but if you want something that's publishable for your ecological research, you need to make sure that it's good quality. Okay, so all that being said, maybe you think, okay, that's all very common sense advice, and I would just do all that. I was going to do all that, and everything is going to go well, which is basically what I thought first when I heard about like setting up or expanding a camera trap project. So I imagine even like just to go to a forest, you set up the camera traps, you come back in a few weeks, and then kind of magically the biodiversity just reveals itself to you. Okay, that's not my actual relationship with camera trapping. Today is a bit more complicated after these 2 years of experience. And I just wanted to share that maybe a bit more informally than on these slides. So just that you realize, if you leave for a field day, you usually leave camp with a very serious scientific mindset. So I would have like everything ready, like the protocol, the GPS point, the batteries, the SD cards, the replacement straps for the cameras. You've got the tools to set up the cameras. You've got the locks to protect the cameras. You've got the keys to open the lock. So everything at this stage, at 8:30-ish a.m. is still under control, and you feel like you're organized. And that's when, after that, in my experience, things can go downwards. Because first you walk, so you walk a lot. You walk through mud, branches, maybe heat. At some time, you reconsider why you're doing this and the value of the actual data that you're going to collect at the very northern end of the park. But then you arrive, maybe slightly tired, slightly wet, but you're proud of having made it. And you take out the keys to open the lock to check the camera. Okay, and that's when things can start to collapse. Because somehow you think you've been carrying really a lot of keys, like a lot of keys, like a jingle with confidence. But when you try to open the padlock, the supposed key that's supposed to work, so key number 12, and you try key number 27, 46, And what happens sometimes is that you realize that you brought about every key that you have except the one that's needed for the camera. So, and that's from experience. You are standing in front of your own camera that you set up at the very end of the forest, locked out by the padlock that you installed a week before. So that's, of course, if the key doesn't work. If it works, then maybe the camera has worked and everything is perfect. But that maybe it didn't. Maybe it produced like 200 clips of moving leaves, maybe one suspicious blur, and like something that may resemble the hind leg of, I don't know, like a red diker, but not actually usable content. Okay, if the camera has worked. Because what happens sometimes is that the batteries run out and you lose maybe a few days of usable data and you have a hole in your protocol. Okay, but still assuming that all this works, you have the proper data in your SD card, then comes the SD card moment, which is always important because it's more than just the SD card, right? It's all the data that you need for your research. It's the reason why you came so far, and it's probably the object that you'd fear the most mishandling. And yet, sometimes, despite all the procedures that you've implemented before, all the labels, all the boxes, all the rituals, maybe, somebody, and by somebody, I mean maybe me, maybe someone else, or maybe just fate itself, I don't know, just erases the wrong card, which is the card that contains all the data that you've come all the way to collect. This happens, actually. So at this point, you just I know, stare in the middle and reflect on your life. But sometimes you do not even reach the cameras because the elephants have a bad habit of crossing your way and coming in the way of your schedule. And sometimes there are like even smaller problems, like you maybe set up your cameras 5 degrees to up, wrong angle. So you end up like monitoring perfectly the upper half of the forest where nothing happens. Anyway, what I wanted to say here is that this is one takeaway, is that something will always go wrong. And yes, camera trapping is a scientific method, but it's also kind of a theater for minor disasters. And a good camera trap program will succeed if you have a good team that's able to not only to anticipate all these problems, but to react on the spot when there's a problem, and to somehow manage to produce good quality data in spite of all these issues. Okay, so now if by this point you're not too discouraged of setting up your camera traps, I'll switch a bit more to the AI part with a DeepForestVision. So this is a classification algorithm that identifies taxa on camera trap photographs and videos for African tropical forests. Why did we get into building this? Because, well, classification algorithms for camera traps are not new per se, but there was actually a gap when we started this project to have something that's tailored to these habitats. So there were not many, and the few that existed, they were not as performant as we would have liked on a broad range of taxa, or, and that's an important part, not available offline to process videos and photographs. And that's important for settings because many camera trap projects, they will produce videos and they expect to have some kind of tool that you can use offline in low resource settings to process your videos. Quick word, the preamble on the use of AI. So the goal here is not to get into that in details, of course, just to tell you that we are not oblivious to that at the Sebitoli Chimpanzee program. The use of AI raising many problems or challenges, depending on how you want to phrase that. Ethical, of course, in the bias, it's like susceptible to reproduce, but also in terms of governance, like who owns the algorithms. So DeepForestVision is an open tool. But also the data infrastructure is quite heavy. So in a kind of power relationship between North and South, who can host these infrastructures? There's all the economical question, of course. What we try to show at the SCP is that bringing in AI in your pipeline doesn't actually remove the need for human work, but it shifts it to different places. The ecological issues. So we have a nation like global problems, but our very small scale, what we try to do is to now use more solar panels for the camera traps, and of course use rechargeable batteries. But that's only one small part of the problem. And then last part, scientific. As I was saying before, you'll always get a number out of the algorithm. So what you make of it is up to you. If you have a ground truth, so camera traps for that are rather easy in terms of images because you can check. If it's some kind of more complicated metric, then you need to be careful. And also one last part, which I call illusion of control, which is more me wearing my math/AI cap. So because what we are saying now is that a sensible use of AI would be as a first layer to support the human analysis and downstream ecological research, which is true, of course. But at the rate that things are evolving today, and provided how long it takes till we hit like either an economical or ecological wall on the development of AI, the actual models are doing much more than just species classification. So they are really bringing about major like systemic changes to the way we work. And I personally do believe that it's also true for conservation. Okay, that being said, how did we build DeepForestVision? It's not really about building an AI model in itself, but the architecture already exists. Unless you want really something, I don't know, something really new, you can take off-the-shelf models. So that's what we did for detection and for classification that were built by Microsoft and Facebook. One of the good things in this field is that all the GAFA and all have agreed to an open model policies, which is really helpful. And then the task on our end is more getting the data ready to train a model, because how robust and efficient your model is will depend on the data that it has been trained on. And more specifically, the more diverse the data is, in the training phase, the more your algorithm will be able to work good in different conditions of habitats, of countries, and camera trap settings. So that was like actually 1 year work to set up a huge database with public sources and also partners, research partners, with like roughly 3 million images and 200,000 videos across 63 research sites. So I realized this slide would make a more compelling point if there was not a big hole in the middle. But we do not, that's the reality of things, we do not have data partners in DRC at that point. But still, we span over like 11 African countries, and it was like, to our knowledge, the largest training database that was put together for this kind of habitats. So once you have the data, the idea is to split it into prediction classes that you want on the algorithm. Those are the 33 animal taxa that DeepForestVision can predict. The red ones are the ones that are vulnerable or endangered, as in the IUCN list. You'd see that some of them are not species level. So for instance, red colobus and red-capped mangabe are grouped together. This is because there's always a trade-off when you build your algorithm between data availability, the ecological relevance of the class, and what your model will be able to distinguish because of visual similarity. I guess the best way to show you what it does is with a few examples. Okay, so going back to the golden cat from earlier. So what the model does, it detects the animal, so that's the box, and then it classifies what's inside the box. And the fact that it's not looking at the outside of the box for classification make it more agnostic to background and therefore better in different environments. You see that at the very end, if you can see here, it's not saying golden cat anymore, it's saying bushbuck, because it has less information and the prediction is not as good. It's not too bad, it's not very important actually, because the algorithm outputs a prediction at the clip level. So if it gets it right on most of the frames, like it did on this clip, it will output the correct prediction for the clip. A couple of other examples. So some of our elephants, and of course the chimpanzees. That's for like nice illustrative clip level examples. But if you want to take a look at the broader picture, what we did is that we ran DeepForestVision on a whole year of data from the Sebitoli Chimpanzee Project, so 2024, that was not seen during the training phase. What you see in red are the predictions of the AI, and what you see in blue is the actual truth as labeled by the camera trap team, which may contain a few errors. Overall, we get almost 88% accuracy, and you see that the global vision is correct across the wide range of taxa, and then you have a discrepancy depending on the actual classes. One thing we can say maybe is that you see that for the blank, so that's the empty clips with no animals, the model tends to overpredict empty clips, and this is due to mostly to small mammals by night, like rodents, that are very hard to detect, so can be missed by the models. Then for the other classes, it really depends on how many data we had for this class and how different it is visually from the other classes. But overall, it's working efficiently. And because there were other tools or they did not meet our deployment criteria, they could still be used for comparison. So we compared DeepForestVision to Zamba and Baza and the Google model, SpeciesNet, and it outperformed them on this task, which doesn't aim to be a full benchmark of these tools by 13 to 45%. This is always work in progress. Next step is the second version, which is currently in deployment with 64 classes, and in particular, finer primate classes, finer bird classes, which are for now grouped into one single class, and semi-aquatic taxa. Now, as I mentioned in the first part, having the AI is fine, but you need to be able to use it on the field and to make something of the predictions. So that's what this part is about, and I guess that's maybe the most important more than the model itself. And for the model to be used offline and to process videos and photographs on a regular laptop with no programming knowledge at all, we had the chance to partner with Peter van Lunteren. We developed ADAX AI, which is the screenshot that you see on the screen now. So it's no programming interface that can run quite a good number of models, not only DeepForestVision. And we're currently using it in Sebitoli, but it's being used also in different African countries. And the processing time, it depends on the hardware that you're using, of course, but it works, and it works without connection. So it means you can collect your 2000 video for this week, you run it through the interface, and even if it takes like 5 to 10 hours, when you come back, it's finished and you have your predictions, which is quite helpful. And we've been doing that now for a year at the Sebitoli Chimpanzee Project with a mix of human labeling and AI labeling. The actual output is maybe less fancy than the clips I showed you before. It's just an Excel frame. Each line is one of your clips. And then you have a column with the label, the predicted label, and a column with a confidence score. So the less confident the model is, the more likely it is to make mistakes. However, it should not be interpreted as an actual probability. And I insist on that, meaning that you can have a 0.9 confidence. It does not mean that the model will be right 90% of the times. It just means that it's more confident than for 0.8 or 0.7 or 0.1. But this is still just kind of a raw output, and if you do not check it, you cannot use it as such for your research because the AI will make mistakes. So that's why we add an important step here, which is the quality control. So this is also extracted from the manual. So where you want to implement some kind of quality control to make sure that your predictions are valid. So basically the use case is that AI will prioritize what humans will check, but humans validate where it matters most. So one way to do it would be to have just a random quality control. You could pick clips at random and you check if the prediction is right, but then you can improve that with more attention paid in specific cases. So for instance, if you have a species of interest, say a pangolin, you don't have that many pangolin predictions, so it's safer to check all of them and even to check maybe small other classes that may be confused with pangolins. As I was saying, if the confidence score is low, then also you want to check more cautiously. And then there are external factors that we know can affect the prediction quality. And for instance, night clips are much more likely to be wrong than day clips. So you may want to pay closer attention to night clips. Yeah, that's, I can wrap it up here. That's what I wanted to say about the AI side. I hope actually that with this talk, I've convinced you a bit that if you want to set up your camera trap project, you have to combine the realities of the field deployment with the usefulness of the AI. And if you have designed this together, then it can bring some value. And then the DeepForestVision that I presented here, if you work in African tropical forest, it can be a useful workflow component if you put it inside like a broader ecological monitoring. What's next for us? So at the SCP and here at the Museum of Natural History in Paris, and as part of the One Forest Vision initiative, is as far as DeepForestVision is concerned, we'll be making more applied hands-on tutorials of how to run it in the interface for our Gabonese and Ugandan partners first, but they'll be open and I can keep you updated on that. We've got a second version coming in that I mentioned with 64 classes. And then moving away from species classification, we're also now studying species individual identification. So not only recognizing chimpanzee, but which chimpanzee it is. And of course, I was saying at the beginning, camera traps are just one brick in the remote sensing tools that you can use. And we also are developing ecoacoustic with similar problematics, trying to show the complementarity between ecoacoustic and camera trapping. And much more to come, but this will be the object of a next seminar. And to conclude, I'd like to address a very warm thank you to the whole camera trap team of the Sebitoli Chimpanzee Project. So Robert, from left to right, whom you've seen in the demo clip, Innocent, who is our coordinator, Oliver, Daniela, and Nathan, and of course, all our founders for this project. If you want to keep updated, for the One Forest initiative, there's a generic website. For the Sebitoli Chimpanzee Project, there's also a very nice website. And for DeepForestVision, there'll be a dedicated page at some point. At this stage, it's in my on my private website, which you can access here. And thank you, of course, to all of you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Hugo and Sabrina. That was really interesting and yeah, great to see. I mean, the videos alone were really impressive. But yeah, we have time for some questions. If you guys would like to ask any, I know that some have already been asked in the chat. I believe there's a few more now. So this one, you can also put your hand up and unmute yourself, but yeah, you can also write in the chat. So we have a question from Ritam. Can anyone camera trap data using the DeepForestVision? More specifically, they have data from their research site and would like to know if they can train their camera trap pictures as well.
Yeah, well, you can use it as such on your pictures. It depends on where is your research site in tropical forest and what kind of species you have. If your species match the classes that I presented, yes, definitely.
Okay. And yeah, as well, we have a question from Paul. Are there any AI models, for identification of species from camera traps that work well in India?
Okay, I thank you, Paul. I don't know much about the India-specific models. There's a global model from Google that I mentioned, which is a species net models. So its advantage is that it will predict anything, including what you find in India. But that's also one of its drawbacks because it's not as performant as something that's specifically tailored. So what I would maybe advise you to do is install the edX AI software that I mentioned and look at the list of available models. So I know there are some for the Amazon forest, there are some for Africa, there are some for Europe. I'm not quite sure for India.
Maybe Hugo, there were quite a good number of questions about birds. Maybe you can give some precision about birds. There is also one question about the when birds are in large numbers or multi-specific, how is it challenging? So
Yeah.
I replied that we use camera trap from the ground level and not from canopy. So next step might be setting a camera trap in canopy, but then there is this question of multi-specific images.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm sorry, I somehow cannot find the chat, but okay. Yeah. So in this first version, DeepForestVision will not be extremely helpful with birds because, as I say, they are grouped in one course class. But in the second one that's coming, we split in maybe 10 classes, so hopefully it will be more useful. Now coming up to your question about multi-species on the same clip. So far, if you use it in the interface, you have two choices. One is to output only one prediction per clip. It will output what it thinks is the most likely bird on the image, and you will miss out on the multi-species. But you also have an option to output any detection that the model makes, and then you just have to sort them yourself by confidence score to see which ones are likely and which ones are not. So that would be one way for you to retrieve the multiple species.
Okay. I think Anton, did you have a question? You had your hand up.
Yes,
Sorry
I had. Hi.
Okay, hi.
Hi, I have a question. A great talk. And I would like to know what are the challenges for individual identification? So for example, you have chimpanzees and leopards, which are completely different species, but have, their specific um markings. Do you need a specific recognition model for a specific species, or is there, because I guess there is no like uniform algorithm that can detect both species?
Yeah, hi, Anton. Thank you. Actually, it's one of the very hot topics currently. There are models, but remain for now more theoretical models than actual tools that you can use that are trained on several species because the methods, when you think of it in terms of deep learning, they're actually not that different, provided that you decide which part of the animal you want to focus on. So you mentioned leopards, they spotted, so that makes it easier. For chimpanzee, we're looking at the faces because we do that for primate-based methods. But let's say, for instance, you have something that works for chimpanzee, it could work for gorillas, and it could work for bonobos. And so it's like in between. I guess something that would be species specific, but the goal of everyone now would be to have a method that you can use on everything. It's not there yet. But what we're trying to develop here is something hybrid in between, like you decide which parts are important for you. So if you have leopards, you know the spots are important, so you will train on body parts. Maybe we help you train a specific detector for that body part. And then the rest of the pipeline, which does the clustering and the classification, it does not depend on the body part which you have chosen. But as I was saying, right now it exists in theory. The goal is to make it an offline field tool as the one for DeepForestVision.
And just a follow-up question, if I may ask, would you say from your point of view, practically speaking, does the ecologist or researcher needs to decide whether he would like, for example, focus rather on chimpanzees or leopards? Because I would assume that if you have three different models running on one, I don't know, if it would do it on board, like a recognition software, it would drain the battery life, like not immediately, but quite fast. Like you have to make a decision at some point.
I know, I don't really think it's a battery issue. It's more like an upstream choice, depending on how much you want to input your own knowledge into the model. And the way it's going now with AI is that we tend to trust more and more AI with the choices and to make fewer of the choices ourselves. So it could be, okay, there are several, like there's a fake detection model for primates, there's a spot detection model for leopards, and then depending on what the species detected is, it just chooses by itself.
Okay, I think there was also a question from Jana, sorry for mispronouncing that. While using ADAX to analyze videos, do you run the program through the CPU or GPU?
Yes, thank you. So it can run on both. Here at the museum, I have GPU, so it's faster. But at SCP on the field, we have a regular laptop with CPU only. So of course it's slower, but it works on CPU.
Okay, great. I see, Sabrina, thank you. You've been answering some questions in the chat as well. Does anyone have any last ones that they would like to ask? Okay, well, of course. Oh, there's a big one that's been added. Okay, well, we can definitely get to respond to. Sorry, I'm just trying to gauge if that's a new question or not. In the chat.
Actually, there were several questions asking if the model can work in countries where it has been not been trained for. If the species are quite similar, so like for example, a question about red colobus, we may expect if there is no species very similar to that one in Gambia, that it could work. And in case you have species which are not listed in DeepForest version 1, you can also write to us. And in case you have a lot of images, we can try to implement with some species of your area. Like for example, for DRC, as Douglas, I think, was asking for.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I would add like also what I was saying before, the fact that it detects the animal, then classifies only the cropped version of it, makes it better, or even if it doesn't, it's a new background, as long as the species is the same or similar, it should work.
And Andy was saying it works well in DRC, but it struggled with images from Liberia. Yes, that's the reason why also we try to have different range of forest, because if the environment is different, it could be challenging. So it's not only a question of species, but also a question of the background. And we have tried to diversify the type of forest and also have like a more open area. So with DeepForest V2, we have river edges. So that's why we have more birds, and also it's more open habitat. So we hope it will work in many other conditions. And then transfer learning, the question of transfer learning of the model you develop to a different geographical location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, that's already kind of what we did using a mega detector, which already exists for the detection, but then we trained from scratch for the classifier. I think it's totally doable. You can access the model on GitHub if you're familiar with it, and then fine-tune it to have your own classes. What would need to be thought, however, is depending on the classes you add and you remove, whether it's beneficial or not for the model to have been trained to group them or to separate them before, because maybe some of it will be detrimental. So, but I don't know.
And like Andy was saying, in case you have some feedback to send us, that we will be very happy to have it. As you said, if it works well for DRC but not in Liberia, we will be happy to receive your comments to try to improve and also to eventually work with you to improve the Liberia one.
Yes. If you're already using it, please let us know. It's been published last year, so it's rather new. We've started to have some encouraging feedbacks. There are still some problems, so we'd be happy to know.
And just also because I think there were quite a good number of people from America, and to also reply the question about India. So we are really open because we started with African forest, but we really want to extend it to America and Asia. So in case you have clips to share, either to train, we don't need to keep the images. The idea is really to train the algorithm, and we really don't want your data to be kept by us. So it's really as Hugo said, trying to make it free to everybody and to have a better monitoring of all forest with harmonized protocols. And so, yeah, feel free to ask.
And especially like for the Amazon, we've initiated a collaboration with researchers there, and it's going maybe to happen in the next few months. And the data sharing process can be slow, especially if we have to send hard drives back and forth. So if you're interested, please get in touch quick.
Okay, great. I think there's one last question. I think Paul's asking about your data sharing. I believe you do have data as part of the article that's available to the public, but also if there's any other record.
So the model itself is available, not the actual data, for the reasons that Sabrina said. They come from research projects and they're often proprietary. So the ones that you find online are for the public sources like Laila, BC, and Wildlife Insights.
Yeah, but yes, we can definitely share this in information afterwards. Like I said, this session has been recorded, so we will be sharing the video afterwards, and also any other links that go along with this talk and information to contact Hugo and Sabrina. And yes, if you have any questions that come to mind, please email them to us and we can pass them on or directly go to Hugo and Sabrina. But yes, thank you all so much for joining. It's been a great discussion, and thank you, Hugo and Sabrina, for joining and sharing your research with us. It's been a great talk. And yes, looking forward to
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Trinity. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you all. See you.
Bye.
Bye.